Welcome to Unbiased and On the Fence. I'm Shane, joined today with special guest Vannessa VA. I should have asked you, do you go by Vannessa VA or some people pronounce it Vannessa VA? So I just, okay, that's what I thought. Actually, I forgot to turn you up. There we go. I'm glad I caught it early this time because a lot of times I won't notice for a minute until people are like, we can't hear her. Okay, so you go by Vannessa VA, so that's awesome. I really enjoy the content on your channel, and I would recommend anyone. I have the links below that you can go to her channel and subscribe. But I would recommend anyone that's new to ME, especially to go there and because sometimes you feel alone, sometimes you feel like you're going crazy, and she has a nice collection of other people's reactions and feelings, and I think it's sometimes helpful to watch these videos and just to know that this is a big effect for people who see it happening. It's a big effect, and you don't have to feel alone. You can see that other people are dealing with it, and we were just talking about it before getting on the air that we feel like you can actually have a positive outlook towards it. So tell me about what you've been working on recently, Vannessa.
Yeah, so I started my channel, I want to say a couple months ago, and it's just an Emmy channel. I don't really cover anything else. I may cover other topics in the future, like the distant future, but I just see the Mandela effect as being like of the utmost importance right now. So that's what I'm covering. I started out like just kind of talking about my perspective, like different theories. And then I came across a video. Oh, I can't remember his name. Man, I'm drawing a blank right now on his name, but basically it was this truck driver who was just kind of talking about his experience, and like he was very distraught. He was pretty much in tears, just talking about how, like, he could see these changes and how like it's real to him, but he just couldn't figure it out. And like I could tell he had probably talked to some people and they just probably laughed at him or called him crazy. So that's that video right there. I think it's the very first video of part one with the fearful and angry Mandela Effect testimony series. But just watching him and like just seeing how distraught he was just kind of inspired me to put together the fearful and angry Mandela Effect series. It's just really, well, first of all, the fact that reality itself is changing or morphing or whatever, that unto itself is disturbing. But the fact that, we go to our friends and family and we try to explain the changes to them, and sometimes they'll see the changes and they'll acknowledge that they have the same memory as you, and then when you try to explain what the Mandela effect is, you try to explain that that never existed. This memory that you, me, and thousands if not millions of people have never existed. When
Hmm.
you explain that to them, a lot of times they kind of backtrack and they're just like, oh, well, you know what, I just must have misremembered it. And then they don't understand that this is something that's really important. It's
Definitely.
really important. And when you tell people about it, a lot of them don't really have, uh, they don't have a reaction to it. And that's just kind of why I put these videos together, because I feel like it's hard enough discovering that your reality is changing, but to kind of tell people about it and then them not acknowledge it, that just makes it harder. And this doesn't have to be a hard process. And I feel like when we can kind of see other people sharing about their experience with it, it makes it easier for everyone to know that, they're not alone in this.
Hmm. I've definitely been almost equally as weirded out, not just the changes, but people's response to them. It's like, you got people that don't see them, and then you got people like, I guess you had interviewed a nurse or someone in the profession, medical field, and she said, well, there's really nothing we can do about it, so why even pay attention to it? And I get a lot of that, with people who do see it. They just seem like they see it, but then, they just carry on and they don't get absorbed or sucked into it like a lot of us do. And it makes me wonder if it's a trigger for us. It's like it's a wake up call, but it's triggered us into what our purpose is to wake people up. You know what I mean? And what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I really do feel like you said it's like an alarm clock. It's a literal alarm clock. Like reality is not what we thought it is, and there's a bunch of theories floating around. No one really has an answer, but if nothing else, this is helping us to kind of question things, like question what reality is, question everything, and that's a good thing. With the nurse interview, she's a really good friend. So I don't really want to give too much information away about where I work, but I do work in the mental health field, and at my job there's a wing for psychologists, therapists, counselors, and then there's a nurses wing that's connected to it. And so I thought, oh, let me just make a video because like we work together anyway. She's a nurse. And before I'd even made the video, I was telling her about the Mandela effect. And initially, she seemed kind of like, shocked by it. And I thought, oh, I'm really waking this person up. And it was a really good feeling to know that I was waking her up to the truth. And, she was seeing all of the body changes and everything. And then I don't know what happened, but over time, I think it just gets to be too much for people. And I totally understand that. Like,
Hmm.
I get it. I get it. Like, we are showing people that basically the impossible has happened, or what we've been taught from a very young age is the impossible has happened. And so, like, initially she was kind of on board with it. Um, and then I guess, she went to Catholic school for a couple years. And so, like, I was telling her about the Bible changes, and that kind of freaked her out. So I kind of like didn't want to really tell her too much about that because I didn't want to freak her out too much. But yeah, I definitely decided, you know what, let me just do an interview because you're a nurse. And a big part of the Mandela effect is there's anatomy changes. I don't know how it's happening. I don't know. I don't know. But I felt like, if I can get a nurse talking about it, a nurse acknowledging that, yes, our body is somehow changing, then this would kind of help people to, maintain their sanity.
Definitely, and that's probably one of the weirdest ones. That's one of the ones that I felt like it almost seems like it's got to be a higher force outside of our current reality bubble that's doing these things because of the way they happen retroactively, like they've always been that way. And then people that think it's just on the internet, it's not just on the internet, people. It's like
No.
you had the one preacher that pulled his 100-year-old Bible out from his closet, and the text had changed in that. And I just think that's so amazing. And then statues, you look at these pictures of people next to Rodin's thinker statue, and it's changed, but they were mimicking it the way it used to be. And that stuff is just, it's not just on the internet.
Yeah, I don't get it. Like, there's so much evidence. Like, why wouldn't you question that? Like, with the thinker statue, like, okay, so the thinker statue is different, but yet there's people next to it posing in a totally different position. You would think that would, like, be a red flag to some people, but I don't know. I don't know. And it's almost like I'm having trouble even relating to the people who are just totally, and I don't even know if blind is the right word, because people will say, people will acknowledge that they have the same memory as you. They will acknowledge that, oh, South America is way to the, like a coworker, I was telling her South America is way to the right.
Hmm.
She, I showed it to her. This was before I even mentioned the Mandela effect, because you got to question them the right way. Like, you got to just ask them about a change. Don't mention the Mandela effect. Just get their memory, have them say it out loud. That way they can't go back and say, oh, that never existed, even though they'll do that anyway. But like, so my coworker, she's also she's a counselor too. So I was talking to her about it one night, and I was like, okay, look at South America. What's different about South America? And she was like, oh, that's weird. It's way to the east. I was like, yeah, that is pretty weird. And she was like, well, I can remember watching, uh, footage of, the way the way the continents were when there was a hurricane warning, and South America didn't look like that. And I was like, yeah. And then I kind of like slowly worked into what the Mandela effect is and why South America looks different. Never heard a word from her since about it.
I know that's so weird that and it's like, and I kind of get it because like at first I could tell my brain was working overtime to come up with a reason why I was misremembering things. So people that say you're just misremembering, I'm like, look, nobody's fought this harder than my own brain for me because your brain wants to come up with anything that makes sense more than the impossible because it seems impossible. So your brain, it's that whole cognitive dissonance thing that you put the definition up on that video. It's your brain. You're holding two ideas that um, don't make sense to one another. They don't jive. So your brain is just working around the clock. It seems like to come up with any excuse. And if I hadn't owned that statue as a kid and, spent so much time drawing it and things like that, I think even the Lion and the Lamb one at some point, I would have just been like, you know what, I just must be mistaken. Even though I sat through
Hmm.
sermons about the wine skins, and I remember like, what the heck's a wine skin? And learning about it as a little kid and things like that. Just, I don't know, because your brain just, it's, I don't know. It's just weird. So I get it when people go
Exactly.
back. I mean, what was your main thing that first got you in the beginning?
Well, the first thing that I noticed,
Yeah.
well, I don't know, because I was thinking about the other day, and well, first, I just want to say it blows my mind that the unaffected, or however you want to label them, they try to say we have cognitive dissonance, but no, do you like? It's a lot easier to just be like, well, I must have misremembered, or it's a lot easier to do that. I wish some days, I wish that I could just be like, you know what? This isn't real. This isn't happening, and it's just some mass misremembering. That would be so much easier, okay? But to say that we have cognitive dissonance, no, it's the other way around. It's the other way around, and
Exactly.
that's
It would be easier to just go back and say, okay, things are as they look. But have you noticed anyone that seemed like they were awake and then they just, I don't know, they just went all the way back to sleep again? That to me makes me like, just got to remember, I can't let go of these memories because I feel like I'll go back to sleep because I've seen it happen, and it's
yeah.
like, gosh, that's scary to see. I don't know.
It's very scary. Yeah, I definitely can think of someone like my roommate. I told him about it. He was like shocked about it, and then he seemed shocked at the time, but then like I don't know. Afterwards, he just kind of was like back to video games, back to life as normal. Like the only time he brought it up to me is he said that he tried to tell people at his job about it, and he said that they just kind of looked at him like he was crazy. But that's the extent of it. I mean, that's the only conversation we've had about it since I told him about it. Initially, he did seem shocked, but now it's just like complete crickets. But yeah, complete crickets. But just going back to what you said about the very first things that I noticed. So I was thinking about it, and at first I thought it was Fruit Loops, and then I was thinking a little bit deeper, and I just realized that, like, with even before the Fruit Loops thing, because Fruit Loops, me noticing that spelling when I was walking down the cereal aisle, that happened, I want to say, a couple of months before I actually realized that it wasn't a logo change, and realized, that the Mandela effect was a thing. And I hadn't even heard about the Mandela effect when I was seeing the Fruit Loops box change. I just thought with the Fruit Loops, oh, it's a logo change. It looks stupid. They should change it back. Bad marketing choice. That's what I thought.
Mhm.
And then a couple months later, I stumbled upon the Mandela effect. But I was thinking about it, and like even before Fruit Loops, there was Jiffy. So I want to say this was like, what, at least 10 years ago. Was it? Yeah, about 10 years ago, it's so weird that like I didn't remember this until recently. I was like walking through the aisle for peanut butter, and I saw this GIF, and I was like, oh, what happened to Jiffy?
Mhm.
And it was just like that simple. I didn't overthink it, and that was just kind of the end of it. But like I do remember Jiffy, but now it's been so long. It's almost like once you are exposed to the new change over time, your original memories can potentially be replaced. That's why I made the one video um, where it was a fearful and angry Mandela Effect testimonies video, but I just kind of put at the bottom for people to read that, like, um, it is possible for your original memories to be replaced by the new reality, which is, I want to say that's kind of disturbing. For the most part, I still have my original memories, but I'll give you a perfect example. Berenstain Bears.
Hmm.
So with the Berenstain Bears, Fruit Loops and Berenstain Bears, actually, those were the changes that stuck out to me the most initially when I first heard about the Mandela effect. I am still able to retain my memory of Fruit Loops, the original memory of fruit, not Froot. That just looks totally wrong to me, but I still have that memory. As far as Berenstain, it's just strange because it kind of goes back and forth. I'll tell you this right now: the Berenstain memory is not. It's not as strong as it initially was. Like when I first saw that and discovered that, I was like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah.
It's STAIN. But what happened was, and this is when I first discovered the Mandela effect, and I was looking up all kinds of examples. I don't really look at example videos anymore just because I feel like I'm awoken to it. I don't need to see any other examples to know that this is real. And then also just because of the whole Berenstain Bears thing, I feel like I don't want to expose, like, I won't, I try to avoid looking at the way the map looks now with South America because I want to hold on to that memory. I don't want my original memory of South America to fade away and be replaced. Um, yeah, I don't even look at example videos anymore. With Berenstain, what had happened was is when I first discovered the Mandela effect, I kept looking at Berenstain Bear videos over and over again. And then I don't know when exactly it happened, but like over time, I don't know. It's like I was looking back at my childhood memories and like I was seeing stain, even though I know that initially it was steam. It was STEIM.
Hmm.
Like I know that, but it's like I don't know. I think it was because I was looking at the new change for too long and concentrating on it, and then somehow that kind of it's that memory's not completely gone, the STEIN, but it's definitely started to fade away a little bit, which is very disturbing. Um, but at the same time, it's kind of like it's interesting because I'm starting to think, okay, maybe the reason why some of these people don't have a memory of the old reality, maybe it's not so much that we're from different realities, you know, like maybe we're all from that same one reality, but maybe it's just some people were able to retain their original memories more strongly than other people. I don't know. There's just so many theories.
Well, I noticed on the ones that I noticed, it's like I had an intimate relationship with whatever it is, and then I didn't have anything to do with it for a long time, and then it changed at some point, and then I saw the change. So, like for instance, the thinker statue, I didn't see that. I had one as a kid, so I mean, it was really familiar to me. But then once I moved out and I didn't have it with me anymore, I lived
Mhm.
my whole life not really paying any attention to it. And the funny thing is, when I saw that it had changed and I saw the new version, it looked familiar to me, like I'd seen it, but I just assumed people had come up with a similar version to it or something. I just didn't realize the original one that I knew so well existed. So when I got on the internet and looked for it and didn't find it, that's why I photoshopped that one that I use all the time, because it just bugged me so bad that I couldn't find a picture of what I knew existed 100%, like I know my name.
Yeah, it's just it's crazy because it's like I don't know. And you know, I get why a lot of people are like kind of freaking out over this because it's like our memories, they make up who we are, you know? And it's like if our memories can be replaced, it's I don't know, it's a little bit freaky, but I totally get what you're saying about it looking kind of familiar. And I think that's because like, okay, so with these changes, and this is just a hypothesis,
Hmm.
but like with these changes, maybe well, of course, not everything changes at the same time. So maybe at some point, for example, with the thinker statue, maybe in your past, when it did originally change, you saw the change, but you weren't consciously aware of it. You know what I mean? If that makes sense.
Definitely.
And
Yep.
so, like, maybe when you became consciously aware of it, you your original memory was already kind of rewritten to have the two memories in your mind,
Hmm.
because when you first saw it you weren't consciously aware of it. So then when you did become consciously aware of it, you're like, oh, I kind of have that one. The original memory is stronger because I've been seeing that for longer, but then the second memory with the change is still kind of a little bit there too, because you saw it, and but you weren't really paying attention to it. It was written into your subconscious mind, but not necessarily your conscious mind, if that makes sense.
Definitely. Yeah, and I think it happened with the Lord's Prayer because debts and debtors seemed really familiar to me, and that's something that I totally would have just thought it was a translation issue, like it was an NIV or another translation, and not realizing the actual King James had changed or something along those lines. So I wouldn't have even thought anything twice, thought twice about that because there's so many translations. But then you go and you read something like, "In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth." You're like, "No way! There is no way that said heaven. It said heavens." And
Mm-hmm.
you know these things, and like the Lion and the Lamb one was a bit. That's the one that initially got me to look at it again. Someone, Joseph Reyna, I was watching him on Leak Project, and he said he mentioned that scripture was the wolf, and I just knew he had to have gotten it backwards. I was like, no way, and I looked it up, and I was just floored. I went and bought a Bible immediately because I went completely digital, and I went out and bought a Bible up at the Family Dollar right away, for,
Yeah.
and looked, and I just couldn't freaking believe it. Oh my God.
It's just unbelievable. Like I said, I mean, and I get why people don't initially take it in, because it's like the impossible has occurred. And like, for the longest time before I discovered that the Bible was being changed, I used to think that this was all just a positive thing. But with the Bible being changed, it's like I can see it. Like, I don't want to curse on your show, but I'll say the S is about to hit the fan. Like, because I live in Virginia, like I'm living in the Bible Belt. You can't even drive for like a couple miles without seeing several churches. So
Hmm.
I just my heart aches for these people, because um,
Were you surprised though? Were you surprised that there wasn't a bigger uproar in the church when I was so surprised
yes.
that I thought the church would just be, I don't know, in the beginning when I saw the Bible was changing, I just started looking and I couldn't find anything on it. And, I got family members that are ministers and I called them up about it and or
Mhm.
sent them text and they didn't hit me back for a few days. I'm like, what's going on? How come, and it's just, I don't know. It was just weird that nobody was talking about it. And there's so
It's
much
very weird.
it's so much I didn't know at the beginning. Like I didn't know that if you read your Bible, I realized it on that video you posted where the preacher gets up there and he's the one that's talking out in like the hallway, and then he goes in and he's talking to the congregation and he's like asking the congregation different questions, and the judge not lest you be judged. You can tell the little old lady he asks that probably reads her Bible all the time. She got it the new way. She quoted it the new way because she reads her Bible all the time. So at some point she read it, it had changed. Nobody thinks the impossible happened. So you can tell who read their Bible all the time is what I'm saying because
Mhm.
it just overwrote her memories over years of reading it.
Yes, and I think that has a lot to do with so the brain can go on autopilot. A perfect example of this is when we're driving. A lot of times, if we're familiar with the area, if we're driving somewhere, our brain will go on autopilot. We will get to a specific location, but we won't necessarily have a memory of how we got there, each specific turn, all that other stuff. I'm thinking that the lady, with remembering the new way the Bible verse was, I'm thinking that when she read it, at the time her brain was just kind of on autopilot and she wasn't really being really aware at the time. So her subconscious mind may have taken in the change, and
Rewrote the
it
old memory.
exactly, exactly.
And we
That's
all
why a
do
lot of
that.
people I'm hearing have dual memories. So they'll like have memories of the change and then the original way. That's how it is with me and Berenstein. Even though I know originally when I first discovered Berenstein, I was that thing stuck out like a sore thumb. Now when I go back and look at my childhood memories, I have a memory of both.
Hmm. It's like that with music for me a lot. It's like somebody pose a question and I'll be like, man, I can think of it two different ways. And I won't know which was first, but
Mhm.
I know it both ways. Almost like they sang the chorus one way and then the next time around they sang it another way. It's just sort of like that. Like, I don't know. It's weird though, but we all go on autopilot while we're reading, and I don't know how many times I got to go back and reread something because I was thinking rather than paying attention to what I was reading, and I can totally see how you would go across some changes, and when you hit it again, it would seem familiar, and if you did it over and over again.
Yeah, that's kind of that's the because I mean, don't get me wrong. I feel like there's a positive aspect of this, and then like there's also a really like kind of scary aspect because it's disturbing because okay, if our original memories can be rewritten, what's the saying they say? Whoever controls the past controls the present and the future. So I don't know exactly where these changes are coming from. I think that some of the changes are coming from a positive place and then some of the changes are coming from a negative place, but it's just disturbing to me how I never realized before the Mandela effect how unconscious people were.
Oh, I know. You're right about that. Gosh.
Yeah, and I just feel like people need to be more aware of their surroundings. What I found is that when you're trying to, convince people about the Mandela effect being real, I and it used to make me really angry because like why would someone choose to be willingly knowfully deceived?
Hmm.
But I don't know. It's like you can't really. There's nothing that you can say to these people. There's no amount of evidence that you can show to some of these people that will convince them that something is happening, and that's disturbing to me because that seems to be the majority of people. Like I was watching Regatta, what's his name? Regatta. I can't pronounce his name. Bonner, his video, and he was like, the one thing that we seem to have in common is that we are surrounded by people who are just totally asleep and like the only way we can seem to find each other, thank god for YouTube, because I think a lot of people would be medicating themselves and would be institutionalized if they didn't have YouTube to see that they are not alone in this. I
Definitely.
hope I'm not getting yeah, I hope I'm not getting too personal, but I always wanted to ask you, um is your significant other on board with this? Like, is she as passionate about this, or are you kind of like on your own with it?
Uh, she's kind of like the nurse that you interviewed, where she sees stuff, but she just doesn't like to look at it, really. You know.
Hmm.
And she's kind of gone back and forth. Like right at first, she saw the JFK thing, and man, her eyes got so big, and I'm like, now you see. And I thought she was finally on board with it, but she kind of just withdrew a little bit because it's really frightening for a lot of people. So they'll see it, and then they'll kind of turtle up a little bit, you know what I mean? Go back in their shell for a little bit. But I think with her, it just took time and sort of easing into it. But I crack jokes all the time about it, and I can still tell she doesn't like when I crack jokes. Mandela. I wonder if it's a Mandela effect, or make a joke like that, and I can tell that she just rather not even hear about it most of the time.
Yeah, I totally relate. Like, I tried talking to my mom and my sister about it, and my mom, before I told her that this whole phenomenon had a name and that something was happening, because see, what I do is I will quiz people first. Like before I even tell people about the Mandela effect, I'll be like, "So, do you remember this? Do you remember that? Do you remember the Monopoly guy having a monocle?" And they're all like, "Yeah, yeah, of course he had a monocle." And oh yeah, yeah, and they'll like agree with me. So I know that they have the same memories as me. Not everyone, but a lot of people they have the same memories. And like I did that with my mom, and like We went through the JFK shooting, and yeah, she's 60 years old. She agreed. Yeah, there's four people in the car. And then so I was telling her, once I got all the answers and confirmed that she had the same memories as me, I told her, this is the Mandela effect. Okay, and I want you, because this we were just on the phone at the time, I want you to go on YouTube and just type it into YouTube. Don't Google it because it'll tell you it's confabulation.
Mm.
Well, I didn't say
Yep.
the confabulation part, but I said just go on YouTube, no other search engine, and just search out Mandela effect. And so then I told her that, and then the next time I saw her, I was like, so hey, did you have a chance to look into the Mandela effect, and what did you think about it? And her answer to me was, is it's not healthy to look into these kind of things. And that was just kind of the end of that. And I don't know, I stopped talking to her. I don't mention it to my sister either, because it's just like, what's the point?
Yeah, my brother was it was really upsetting because you reach out to these people that you think if something like this happens, you can reach out to certain people and they'll be there for you. And it's just, gosh, it was so shocking that at a time like that, when you think something this serious is happening, you'll have those close people to talk to, they sort of abandon you, and then you're sort
Yeah.
of left out there. That's why I think all the videos you have are good, because it shows that people aren't really alone in this thing. We're separated, but we're all dealing with the same type of thing with the people close to us. And like my brother was like, yeah, I see it, but nobody cares. They're just, trying to pay their bills and stuff. And I was just like, wow, and I'm wanting to have them look up old stuff. I wanted to see if one of them had the old statue, because our parents died, and all of their
I'm
things went to
sorry.
each of us, when it's been a while, but it's we have their things. So I'm like, I'm wanting to talk to them and say, hey, can you find this old videotape? Because I think it might have the statue in the background, and because they're not on board, I can't even. I mean, I've asked them, but I never hear back from them, and they just don't want to think about it. So, and I let them have pretty much everything. So it's like it sucks because it's like, man, I wish I would have kept a few things.
Yeah, that's, I think, because like I've always looked into, like, different topics, as far as, like, I guess people could label it new age, but I hate that term, because really it's old age. Like the new age, a lot of the new age stuff that actually came before Western civilization. But like I looked into a lot of that, and so the fact that as far as like manifestation, reality changing, that okay, that I can deal with. That I've been, reading up on and studying for years, like years and years.
Hmm.
But like the reaction of family members, I mean, the very first week when I discovered the Mandela effect, it was very scary for me. I'm not in a place of fear anymore. So, for those of you who are just now waking up to it, the fear does subside. It does get better.
Hmm.
And I know you may be feeling kind of scared and unsure right now, but it does get better. But the first week that I woke up to it, it's like I I did question whether or not I had died. Like that's how scary it was. And like you try to reach out to people and it's just no response at all. And that's what's just really concerning or disturbing to people, because it's like you said, Shane, you try to reach out to these people and you just feel totally abandoned, like people you've known for years. And it's like, what could possibly be more important than reality itself changing? Um,
Exactly.
it's like, and I was talking to someone who, like, kind of went back to sleep on me, and I was telling him, okay, say you're sitting here and this chocolate bar just kind of materializes in front of you. Just one moment there's nothing, the next moment there's the chocolate bar. Like, would you even question how it got there? Would you even question where it came from? Or would you just pick it up and eat it and go about your life? Like
Hmm.
I was, because I was trying to like use an analogy to explain to him why the Mandela effect is a big deal, why you shouldn't just brush it off. But I'm convinced there's nothing that you can say or do for these people
Hmm.
that will. And I don't know if there's like a nefarious reason why. I don't know why. I try not to think about that too much. Um, but yeah.
I had some of those same feelings at first too, because when something like that's happening and then people are acting the way they're acting, I sure thought I might have died at one point. I'm like, oh my God, have I died? Have I? I've had just the weirdest thoughts that would have never even come across my mind if it wasn't really happening. And you can't explain that to people. I like to use the analogy of telling people, what if your eye color changed? You looked in the mirror one day and your eyes were brown, but now they're blue or green, a real light color.
Hmm.
And then you go and you tell everybody, hey, look at my eyes, they changed colors. And everybody's like, they've always been that color. You know what I mean? How weird that would be. And that's the analogy I always use because I think it's got to be something really strange to,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I used to think that like and some people still a lot of people still think this, but I used to think that like the Mandela effect would like the changes would just become so ridiculous and so outrageous that like everyone on the planet would just acknowledge that yes, the Mandela effect is happening. Yes, it's a real thing. Like I just thought that like it would get to that point, but like when South America moved way to the east and like I would show people and they would acknowledge not everyone, but most people would acknowledge that, hey, South America is way to the east.
Hmm.
Like when that happened, because I used to think that, most people would get to the point where like the changes would just be so ridiculous that they would have no other option but to wake up. But
Hmm.
now that I'm seeing that like the South America, an entire continent has moved and like they see it,
Hmm.
but it's just like, so what did you do this weekend? Did you watch the football game? Blah 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 blah. Like
Or start filling
I'm
on their phone, or I gotta go, or just
exactly,
weird stuff.
exactly. I'm convinced that there is nothing that can happen to these people that can wake them up. Like, and that scares me because what if we wake up tomorrow and like the Constitution has been changed?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like they'll just go right along with it. They'll just be like, "Oh, it was always like that. What are you talking about? You're crazy. What do you mean? It's always been that way." Like, are you serious?
A
Are
heart,
you serious?
the, the
And I
heart
think what's
moving
scary
was
is
another one.
there's just not enough of us. There's not enough of us.
Right. So why just the select few are seeing this is just a puzzle to me because like I was just saying the heart moving, I thought for sure, and I'll even ask people like, where's your heart, and a lot of the younger people will say right in the middle of your chest, and I'm like, what?
Mm.
And then but older people will say, well, it's on the left, and then they'll look it up and they say, well, it's kind of on the left. And it's like, what? It was way over here. It wasn't kind of, it was way on the left. It's just
Yeah,
strange.
and that's another thing. Like, so the younger generations, they're not even gonna have, that's why I said earlier, like whoever controls the past controls the present and the future. The younger generations, they're not gonna have any kind of memory of what the Bible used to say. They're not gonna have any kind of memory of how it used to be because that would just be the norm for them. That's why I'm like, yes, we are ascending. This whole thing is like it's a symptom, I feel like, of us ascending to a higher level, but at the same time it's like maybe we have to go through this, whatever you want to call it, this like crazy nefarious stuff in order to ascend to that higher level. So there's some bad in it, but then there's also some good in it as well, and really in the end the good will win out against the bad.
And
It's just difficult to get to the good.
Yeah, definitely. But I think the changes, even though I mean they rock our world, no doubt about it, but they could be really, really bad. You know what I mean? They do seem subtle in a way. Um, to a certain extent. I mean, you can imagine changes that, like, you can imagine traffic lights changing in the middle of traffic and causing wrecks and pileups, but somehow they changed because I'm looking at your logo or your avatar with the green light, which isn't actually an effect for me. But if that happened in the middle of traffic, there would have been all sorts of wrecks at the same time. You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly. That's why I feel like, you know what, no matter what happens, no matter what kind of, ridiculous stuff happens, God has our back. God already knew that this would happen. And honestly, before we were born, we signed up for this. We knew exactly what we were getting into. So on the days where I'm just feeling like really depressed and really just like this really sucks, I have to remind myself that no one's to blame for this. God isn't to blame. No one, I knew what I was getting into when I chose to be born on this planet. I knew exactly what I was getting into.
Hmm.
So, yeah, with the traffic lights, that's pretty trippy. And what's weird is I can't even tell you when exactly they changed
Hmm.
because I think my mind did the thing where it was kind of on autopilot
Yeah.
and it went into my subconscious mind first before it got to my conscious mind. So, but I do have a memory of green being on top. So I
For
don't
me,
know.
for me, the prohibition signs like that when I was making that 50 Mandela effects video not too long ago, I had both pictures there and I looked at both of them and I couldn't see the difference between them because for the prohibition sign, you don't ever really look at the circle with the line. You just look at what's behind it. So you completely always ignore it. You know it's there, but you know it's a don't do this symbol on top of whatever's behind it. So your brain focuses on what's behind it, you know. And someone said that, oh, I noticed the parking one because it started making it look like an R when it switched the other direction from top left to
Hmm.
bottom right. And but yeah, even looking at them, I was like, those are the same. I thought I got one of each, and then I looked again. And I was like, oh, they are different, you know. So it's kind of funny the way the brain works like that, you know.
Yeah, it's very funny. Like I'm the same way with the prohibition sign. Like I kind of have a memory of both. Like that's I don't know. I'm kind of thinking that like I think that different realities merging, yes, that definitely does play a role. But I'm also thinking that another aspect of the ME is that just some people are able to retain their old memories better than other people, and I'm not sure why. Um, I did want to ask you though, um, do you with the picture of the Last Supper, because that kind of freaked me out for a while, like the painting of the Last Supper.
Hmm.
Have you looked at that recently?
I have, and I heard a few different things talked about it, but like there was there something about salt being spilled, or it used to have a chalice and now it doesn't? I heard a few things about it, and I just wasn't sure. It all sounded familiar. Every way people were talking about it sounded familiar. I was like, wow, that's weird, you know?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple weird things about it, like the chalice, like you said, it used to be on the table, now it's like kind of on the wall. And then just I have a very clear memory of like the way that all the people are positioned now, it's like they're like more confrontational. I have a memory of them sitting like more peacefully at the table and like people weren't like, whispering into people's ear, and people in the way it looks now, it looks very suspicious. Like everyone is suspicious of Jesus. And I have a memory of it wasn't like that. Like they were sitting calmly at the table and it just I don't know, it wasn't like that. That kind of messed me up for a long time just because I mean that painting came out so long ago. It's the same with the Mona Lisa. Like when I when I realized that the Mona Lisa changed, I had to like do a double take.
Me too. It was like that. It was like, oh my gosh, it's like that was creepy because it's like you. I never could tell if she was actually smiling, but now she's clearly smiling, and it was almost like whoever did the change um, is smiling at you. You know what I mean? So it makes it kind of have that eeriness about it. But
Yeah, it's one of those things and it's like that's why I mean, there's a bunch of theories floating around, but like time travel is a theory, and I understand why because it's like, well, first of all, they say time is an illusion, which I do believe, but um, somehow I feel like um, the technology is somehow being brought back there, like back in the past, maybe, and
hmm.
like maybe that's how the changes are happening. I don't know. It's craziness, and I mean there's a million theories floating around, like everything from time travel to I think maybe the fact that we're in a simulation plays a role too, like as far as people's programmed responses to the Mandela effect.
Definitely. Yeah,
Oh,
I kind of got this vision. I don't know, a few weeks back where I stopped seeing time as because they always say time's an illusion. So I stopped seeing it as this sort of timeline where you have to go back and make a change, because time travel never made much sense because of the body changes for me. Um, that would make sense that somebody could go back and make our heart be in a different place. And then the JFK assassination being so much different, it's like no one could have gone back and made them create this car that didn't exist before, or just like somebody just going back in time. I mean, so many things were changed about that, and it was so surgical. And then making film color, and there was just so many things about it that I feel like it would have been so difficult for somebody to get in a time machine and go back and make all of that stuff happen in such a
Hmm.
surgical way. But I started viewing time as like a consciousness bubble, and our perception of the past is still in the now. So when we think about the past, we're still looking at it right now, and you would only have to change how we're seeing it right now to actually change the past rather than actually going back. So kind of like if you were to pause the Sims game, if you're the programmer, you could pause it at any point, make a few changes, like say your character in Sims bought a blue car, you change it to red, and then all of a sudden, the picture on the wall when the character first bought it that was blue changes to red, and everything just sort of gets updated, so it looks like everything was always that way, or the car was always red, but he only had to
Hmm.
pause it, make a few tweaks with the coding, and unpause it, and then no one's the wiser about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. That what you just said right there reminds me of Dr. Robert Lanza's biocentrism theory.
Hmm.
I don't know if you're familiar with him or not, but basically he kind of just says what you just said, like um, there's only the present, and that even when we're thinking about the past, we can only think about the past in the present.
Hmm.
Same with the future, we can only imagine the future in the present. There's only right now.
Hmm.
So I mean, if we're thinking about the past, then we're doing that right now. So that's why I think maybe like ascension kind of comes into it, because maybe it's like the way that our frequency is, like maybe the ones who are able to not just see the Mandela effect but are passionate about it, maybe our frequency is a little bit higher, so we're able to kind of tune in to the way it used to be.
Hmm.
We have greater access to that.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it too. So while we're talking about consciousness, you did a video a while back where you were talking about, because it ties in with the whole Schumann resonance and how our memories are tied in with that. And I was thinking, if before I knew about the Mandela effect, like there were certain things that came around, like now or laters. We would call them now or laters, as when I was a kid, and I found out they've always been now and laters, and so that was like 2009 when I saw that. So that was one thing that I noticed, and then the clouds having sort of this iridescence or rainbow effect to it. I thought it was just chemtrails, but I can't say for sure that that's not an effect as well. When you look through certain types of glasses, sunglasses, and you look near the sun, you can see the clouds look rainbowy. They didn't look like that when I was a kid, and the sun certainly didn't look white like someone's arc welding. It looked more yellow, and all of those things could play a part. And I don't know if I guess I think there could be up to three things causing the Mandela effect changes, or what we attribute to the Mandela effect changes. It could be purposeful changes, which it seems like there are. There could be things that are just changing through this ascension process you mentioned, and then there could be just changes that are done for nefarious reasons by side effects of quantum computers or whatever. So I don't really take anything off the board as far as that, but I do know that there's some purposeful changes, changes that I found meaning in, and then of course the changes with our solar system. So the color of the sun. When did you notice that it's not as yellow anymore?
Oh, I can't really put a specific date on it, but at some point, like, because I remember being a kid and being able to, like, you could at least glance at the sun for like, a couple of seconds, but now it's like it's so bright, you can't even glance at it for like, you know, more than 3, 4 seconds because it's so bright white. Um, And I don't know. See, this is where I'm kind of torn because I don't know if the sun changing is a Mandela effect. Like, I don't know if it was yellowish
Hmm.
at one point and then like it did gradually change, or I don't know if like in a different reality it was always the way it is now, and in another reality it was always yellow. But yeah, there's a lot of things going on with our solar system. Like, just over the past 40 years, I mean, the brightness of Venus has increased to, 2,500%.
Yeah.
Not 100%, not 200%, but 2,500%. Pluto is experiencing like a 300% increase in atmospheric pressure.
Hmm.
There's actually global warming going on Pluto, which is kind of crazy to me. I'm sure everyone's already heard about how, like, on Mars, there's global warming going on Mars, which that's very interesting to me because we all know, or we've all been told, that global warming is happening on Earth, which, I mean, I believe it. Like, there's some crazy climate changing stuff going on Earth when it comes to global warming, but
It's not the SUVs though.
exactly. Like, last time I checked, there wasn't any SUVs riding around on Mars or on Pluto. Like, what's up with that? There's even global warming on Neptune's largest moon. I think it's called Triton.
Hmm.
So all of the, like, global warming is not just happening on Earth; it's happening on other planets, other planetary bodies. So um, I've been doing a lot of research on it, and another thing is that the Schumann resonance. So the Schumann resonance is basically, it's the electromagnetic field that surrounds the Earth.
Hmm.
It goes to the edge of the Earth's stratosphere,
Hmm.
and it's composed of electromagnetic waves, and it's just made up of electrons and ionized atoms.
Hmm.
Now, what's really interesting is that, okay, so the Schumann resonance is measured in hertz, Hertz.
Hmm.
And I believe that the regular Schumann resonance of Earth is 7.83 hertz.
Hmm.
So that's that. Now, our brain waves are measured in hertz as well. Our brain waves have an electromagnetic component to it. So, you know how, like, on a lot of movies, you'll see that little machine with the line going up and down beeping. I don't know
Hmm.
what that thing is called, but yeah, there's definitely an electromagnetic element to our brain waves. So, just in doing my research, I found that the Schumann resonance is linked directly to our brain waves, so they're kind of synced up.
Hmm.
And just for, I'm sure you're probably already familiar with this, but like, just for your viewers that are listening, if you look up, it is a article published by Miller in the Journal of Consciousness and Exploration and Research. I think it was published in 2013. The Schumann resonance is really, it really impacts humans. I mean, just on the mainstream level, science admits that, it impacts our blood pressure, cardiac and neurological disease, reaction time, sociability. It has a huge effect on us. So,
Hmm.
I mean, when I found out that the Schumann resonance is directly linked to our brain waves, it was kind of like a light bulb moment, because it made me realize that our brain waves and the Schumann resonance are directly interlinked. Like, they sync up.
Hmm.
And I think it was, what, January of 2017. There was a huge spike in the Schumann resonance. It was like 36 plus hertz.
Hmm.
And then, like, back in 2014, it spiked up again to like 15 to 25 hertz,
Hmm.
which, I mean, the average person hears that and they're like, oh, okay, well, the Schumann resonance went up. Maybe it had some kind of slight effect on our brain waves. But with all the research that I've been doing, I've been finding that, like, there's a huge link. Like, so this is why I think that our brain waves are directly connected to the Mandela effect. Our brain waves are really, really important.
Hmm.
And anyone who's, questioning how important our brain waves are in terms of our ability to perceive reality. So when we dream, our brain waves switch from alpha, which is between, I think, 8 to 15 hertz. So it switches from alpha to theta, which is 4 to 7 hertz.
Hmm.
So when our brain waves switch between frequencies, it literally changes our reality. Because think about it, you're awake, you're at alpha, and then you go to sleep, you're at theta, and you are dreaming and you are in a totally different reality.
Definitely.
Like a lot of times you don't even have a memory of this reality.
Hmm.
So that's why, brainwaves are really important. So keep in mind now, our brainwaves sync up with the Schumann resonance, right?
Hmm.
So when the Schumann resonance rises, it has an impact on our brainwaves.
Definitely.
Um, so the delta brain waves are zero point 0.1 hertz to 3 hertz. Theta is 4 to 7 hertz. Alpha is kind of like our waking state, that's 8 to 15 hertz. And then beta is a little bit higher than alpha, that's 16 to 30. And then there's a higher brainwave state, which is like 31 to 100 hertz. This is called gamma. So gamma is associated with insight, peak focus, even like expanded consciousness. So you kind of have to think to yourself, like, okay, when the Schumann resonance peaks to 36 plus, like it did this January, what impact is that going to have on our brain waves? Which, our brain waves are used to syncing up to the regular 7.83, right?
Hmm.
But when the Schumann resonance peaks up, it has an effect on us. So that's why I'm thinking that the Schumann resonance is, along with many other elements. I mean, like you said, there's not just one single cause to the Mandela effect, but Schumann resonance is definitely having an impact on the electromagnetic field. Um, and the electromagnetic fields links up directly to our brain waves. I'm thinking that people who are experiencing the Mandela effect, perhaps they're more sensitive to the Schumann resonance. Their brain waves are more sensitive to it, so they're more likely to see the Mandela effect.
And then there's to consider there's interference like cell phones and all of our electronics and how much they affect us, and the towers and just all of that has to be taken into consideration because it's all electromagnetic. How much time you spend
Exactly.
in in nature and stuff could probably have a big impact. So yeah.
Exactly.
Have you
That's why I'm thinking. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to ask if you'd come across the work of Cliff High before.
No, I haven't.
Well, he was talking about two different people. One person was saying that you wouldn't even be able to, from space, you can't see the sun or the stars. It's our atmosphere that makes them visible. But then Cliff High was talking about the sun isn't a nuclear reactor like we think. It's actually being affected by external forces, because you know how our whole solar system is moving through the galaxy, and they
Hmm.
say it's like the solar wind that the sun hits is what creates the light that it puts off. And in one of your videos, you were explaining how it could simply be our atmosphere itself that's changing the color of the sun. I mean, literally, the sun might be white all the time, but then just the chemical makeup of our atmosphere could totally change the color of it, just like it does, when the sun goes down and the sky looks redder because it's kind of hitting the gases at an angle, and you're seeing it travel through more gas at, sunset and sunrise. But I also saw a video recently that was saying how we're moving out of a cloud into sort of a nebulous pocket. And that could affect what the sun is burning if it's an external sort of a illumination, because they say sunspots are holes, and I'm like,
Yeah.
have you heard some of that stuff about that? That's just wild to imagine. That's why it's so much hotter at the surface than it is on the inside. Is that it's really not burning on the inside? It's really all on the outer part of it.
Yeah, and it's honestly, I'm still on the fence. Like, it's really hard to tell as far in terms of, like, is it something that's surrounding the atmosphere, whether it be in space or closer to us, that's causing the sun to change color, or if the sun is actually change itself is actually changing color.
Hmm.
It's I don't know. It's hard to say, but I mean, I will say that mainstream science, they will admit that the sun's electromagnetic field has increased by 130%. And this isn't like, conspiracy theory or anything like this. I mean, the 130% in the the magnetic field. That was a study done by Dr. Lockwood
Hmm.
of the Rutherford Appleton National Laboratories in California. So they will admit that. Like, that's not even up for debate. Like, what is up for debate is, what's causing the sun to become so excited.
Hmm.
So I've been doing a lot of research, and I know, a lot of people's reflex when they first hear this is to just claim, you're a conspiracy theorist, and they've been saying this for years that Planet X was going to come. But I think that, well, space.com has admitted that Planet X is real. And you know what's confusing is they have a lot of different names for it. Like, some will call it Planet Nine, Nibiru. There's multiple names for it, which kind of makes it confusing.
I think that's
But
on
it's all,
purpose.
oh, exactly, exactly. It's all the same thing. So I really believe that, and it's not going to be something that probably happens next year or the year after that, because it's slowly coming in. It's a planetary body, but at some point, probably within a lot of our lifetimes, we will see that it's coming in, and it's just causing crazy changes. Like, I think that's what is having an impact on the Schumann resonance on Earth, and I think that is what is having an impact on the sun, making the sun more excited.
Definitely. Yeah, I totally agree. And they actually say they can see perturbations in the actual planet's movement, like something's tugging on it that we don't see. And
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Mainstream science admits that our solar system is tilted. Like, they'll admit that.
and the video that I linked your channel, but I also linked the video underneath that about the solar system that talks about what we're talking about. And in that same video, towards the end, you had some I don't remember where they were from, but they were talking about how the sunrise was different. The sun was rising and setting in a different location, and I've noticed that myself with the moon and the sun being a little further north than I remember it ever being.
Yes, I have too as well. And I think that, no matter what, there's always going to be a group of people who are just going to deny it and, call us conspiracy theorists, even though, space.com admits it. Just a lot of mainstream, they admit it pretty quietly, but they will admit that, like, Planet X has been found. Our solar system is tilted. It's
Hmm.
tilted. Like, how can you deny people who see that on mainstream science? How can you deny that? It's not even me saying it. It's mainstream science. They're admitting that it's tilted, but yeah, I mean, I think that Planet X is real. It's
Hmm.
having an impact on the Schumann resonance. It's impacting the electromagnetic field, which is directly linked to our brain waves. And
Hmm.
when our brain waves are synced up in a specific way, we do have memory of the old Earth.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I don't know how
It's
much of that is, ME or not. Like that could be a completely separate issue, and that could be what's causing, like you're saying, that could be what's causing some of these differences in memories, too, because it's an external force, and our memories we think of them as being in our brain, but they're in our
mhm.
consciousness, which isn't
Yep.
really tissue. It's actually electrical or electromagnetic.
Exactly. You're so right. I think we all of us, we've just been conditioned from a very young age to believe things that aren't necessarily factual, and that was done by design. I think it was done on purpose, but a lot of things, it's coming to the light, and it's just a matter of how willing are you to overcome the cognitive dissonance that comes along with it, to open up your mind and look into things.
The other thing that's funny is the older I get, the more I realize that everyone's just guessing. It's kind of like when you watch Dr. House and we'll try this and run this test and give them this medication, and then that didn't work. Let's see. Let's go back to the drawing board. They have no idea what the sun is because they've never really been there. You know what I mean? So they're really just making educated guesses at the end of the day.
It's so true. I mean, no scientist can really even explain what consciousness is, but that's the one thing out of everything that we can all agree is real. you
Yeah,
know,
definitely.
it's craziness, but yeah, I think that anyone denying the fact that Planet X isn't a real thing, Just look at the chemtrail spraying. Why is it? It's always at sunrise and sunset when the sun is dimmest, and you can actually look at it because it's not so white and blaring.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it they're doing that at sunrise and sunset? What are they trying to hide? And then it gets even more complicated because you have this whole flat earth movement coming into place, which, I mean, it's not necessarily a bad thing because if nothing else, the flat earth movement does help people to kind of question things and like open up their mind. But I mean, at the same time, you just got to wonder, okay, all right, if the government wanted to stop people from even believing that planets were real or that space were real, if they wanted to stop that, what could they put into place to, make people think that, none of it's real and the earth is just flat and there's no planet coming closer to earth, that's impacting the Schumann resonance because planets aren't even real and space isn't real, and you know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah, and that everything's just sort of a hologram up there that we're in the Truman Show or something. It's almost, it would have to be, um, the way I've watched the planets for years, and I remember having a girlfriend when I was a teenager. She was in Arizona, and I was in St. Louis, and we would go out and look at the stars together. Now the distance between us, we wouldn't have been able to see the same stars. So it would have to be that there's some sort of screen, hologram screen up there for us. They're projecting something for her, and then they're projecting something at my location for us to be able to see the same stars at that distance away, because that's technically further away than the stars are supposed to be on the dome or whatever. So there's a lot of problems with that I can't hop on board with the flat Earth thing, and it's hard because at our perspective, from as tiny as we are on the planet, it'll always be flat for us. You know what I mean? Because we're just
Yeah.
so tiny. We're like a speck on it. So
Yeah,
and we'll
well,
never be able to prove it really.
I like to use the analogy of like bacteria on a basketball. Like back for bacteria on a basketball, they will never ever see a curve. They just won't. You have to be very high up to see a curve. Um, and honestly, like I don't have anything against the flat earthers or anything like that. I know some of them may be upset at me for this, but like honestly, when I first heard about it, like I looked into it. I thought it was extremely interesting. Like I did a lot of research on it, and there are some points that I don't really have the answer to just because I'm not like a math whiz,
Hmm.
like because a lot of their reasoning has to do with like figuring out math and all this other stuff, which I've never been good at math. But yeah, I don't know, there was just kind of too many holes in it to for me to really latch on to it, but I did look into it. I thought it was extremely interesting when I first heard about it.
Hmm. Well, when I considered NASA as most of the evidence on it, I was kind of, and then you take them out of the equation. I went ahead and was sort of on board with it, but then as you keep considering things, and it would just get picked apart to where I would have to lean towards the whole round or globe Earth, or the fact that it's just not a plane anyway. It might be a contact lens or a donut or something else. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, who really knows? And I don't know. Who knows? Like, no one knows really what consciousness is. The whole holographic universe thing. If anything, maybe like we're in a holographic kind of thing. Who knows? Who really knows? I mean,
Yeah.
um, and it's just so crazy because like I was watching a video earlier today, and they were just like, I never would have dreamt in my wildest dreams that I would have lived through something as crazy as the Mandela effect, like lived through as something as crazy as the Bible changing. And I feel the same way. Like, I just never would have thought that this would have happened in my lifetime.
Oh yeah, it's almost like I felt like I woke up in a sci-fi movie or something. It's just wild.
Yeah, it is very wild.
Well, gosh, the hour went by so fast. It's already been an hour and 10 minutes. Um,
Yeah, it went by really fast. Time flies.
yeah, well, I need to have you back on sometime because this was a really great discussion, and I want to have everybody to click her link and go subscribe because she's got a lot of great content. And is there anything else you want to say before going, Vanessa?
No, I just want to thank you for having me on. I've been watching your videos for a long time, so I want to thank you for what you do. Like you're a really positive light in this whole thing, and just keep doing what you're doing. I did want to ask you just real quick before we go, like,
Hmm.
because I'm interested in your opinion. Like, what 20 years down the line, how do you see the Mandela effect impacting our society? Like, what's the world going to be like 20 years from now with this whole Mandela effect?
Oh gosh, I guess I plan on things changing pretty soon. To be honest with you, shifting into a world where we don't have the elite running things, and it's just more equal and loving. And I imagine things changing really soon, and that's really the only thing that doesn't resonate with the new Wingmakers material I've been looking at. Is some of their stuff says it's so far out, it's like 2 generations. The same way with the other guy I watch, Jim Self. He talks about
Hmm.
the generation that is just now being born will see these changes, but I really feel like it's going to be sooner than that. But it could be wishful thinking, you know. I hope it's sooner than that. I don't want to be, you know. I got a fortune cookie the other day, and it said, "Your worst fear will become your biggest strength." And my daughter asked me, she said, "Well, what's your biggest fear?" And I was like, "Wow, I guess that I'll still be around when I'm 80 on the planet that's like it is right now." You know? So I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh gosh,"
Your
but
guess is as good as mine.
yeah, it's all speculation, you know. But I just take it. I try to live in the moment, one day at a time, as they say, and you know, just hope for the best.
Yeah, I just try to remain positive. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still have my days, but I feel like at this point, all we have left is our minds. So I refuse to cave in. I refuse to just throw my arms up and be like, oh, this is the end of the world. I feel like there's some positive that's going to come out of this no matter what. No matter what.
Well, kudos to you for being able to somewhat maintain a sane lifestyle and stuff. You know, I was doing the flea market booth on the weekends, and after spending a couple of weekends of talking to people about it and getting the response I did, I was like, I can't do this anymore. so
Yeah.
so I work at home doing graphic design when I have to make extra money, but besides that, you know, this is pretty much what I do all the time. So
Yeah.
it would be real difficult to have to go into a place like where you know where you work or whatever and deal with people that's blind all the time.
Yeah, it's just I would say keep doing what you're doing, like the material that you're providing for people, you're doing a huge service for people. So I just want to thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate that, and definitely want to have you back on sometime.
Yeah, definitely. So thanks for having me on tonight.
Oh, no problem. You can hop in the chat if you like to, and let me make sure. Oh, you're already in there. Have you been there all the
Yeah.
time? Oh, didn't even notice.
Off and on.
Okay, so I just wanted to give you an opportunity to hop in before I shut it off because if you're not in there, it won't let you in after that. But okay, so until next time, everyone, have a good one.